Reasons we beg to oppose.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite speaker number 2 from the opposition.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dante, and I think I should begin. I'm following two quite distinguished speakers. Mike Rumbles led the debate. He's got a reputation within the Parliament as being a very independently minded MSP, a very commendable thing, well respected across party boundaries, and he also has a considerable military background of his own, and I think he brings, in some respects, more expertise into this debate than probably all of us combined, and certainly more with the greatest of respect to our illustrious opposition. For somebody of Mike Rumbles' standing to be described as naive or making a naive case, well, I don't want to think what that makes the rest of us. I think mere pygmies would probably be an overstatement, that case. It's also a pleasure actually as well to follow Barney, and as I was preparing for this, I recalled a previous debate several years ago when, in a different capacity, I and a number of people from the Labour Club at the time were defending the government, and tonight he is defending the government's position, which goes to show that 2 years is a long time in politics and times change. What I can't do, I can't boast re-election victories with an increased majority, and I can't boast 2 Scottish championships, but I intend to follow on the case which was developed so articulately by Mike Rumbles. Now, when I heard the case, the opposition case, it seemed to me in some ways that it felt almost like a throwback to a time when many of us in this room were still playing with our rattles, if we were even born. A throwback to the 1980s, throwback to some of the old debates. We talked about deterrence, there was a talk about the arms race and hostile states. All of these other issues, all of these other concepts. They didn't mention that awful expression, woolly heads in woolly hats, but I was almost expecting it. I was waiting for it to come out, but it didn't. No, I'm not taking interventions. I've got 7 minutes, and there's a lot of arguments. There's lots of arguments. There you are, the authoritarian side of me. But we're now dealing with change times. We're dealing with new themes. The Cold War is over. The type of threats that we as a country face, the type of threats that the world face, are very different. We do not have this clear distinction in international relations that we used to. In fact, now there's much more of an emphasis upon global terrorism, the threat of this kind of extremism, which threatens all of our societies. To deal with that, a nuclear weapon system such as Trident is not just obsolete, it's completely unnecessary, and it's irresponsible, actually, I think, for politicians to propose that. So we've got this issue of dealing with global terrorism. There's also another issue about dealing with the issue of nuclear security. There are a number of countries around the world, chiefly Pakistan and Russia, where you have big stockpiles of nuclear weapons. Frankly, there are quite a lot of concerns about the security of those stockpiles. And no, there are concerns about those stockpiles. There are concerns about the safety of them. And I think that for our part, all of this is connected. For our part, by renewing our own nuclear weapon system and by contributing to this increase, this proliferation in nuclear weapons around the world, we actually make ourselves less safe, and we actually increase the dangers. Now, there's also the issue of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is not at all insignificant, and there are countries which see this, and they see double standards in our position. We might not see, people in this country might not see double standards, but across the world, there are many other people that do. There are countries such, and if you take the logic of deterrence, if a country such as Iran, for example, were to take that line, Iran can argue that for all of the repressive elements within the regime, because for all of their repressive tendencies, they have not attacked a country beyond their borders. The threats, that they do not at this stage have nuclear weapons, but they want to acquire them as a means of as a means of securing themselves. And they look at a country such as North Korea, which and they feel under threat themselves. And when they look at a country such as North Korea, which is not going to be attacked because they have nuclear weapons, they, unsurprisingly, want to get that safety for themselves, and they feel threatened by other countries, and they see it as a means of guaranteeing their security. And so we create a dangerous precedent, I think, and we've got to be aware of that. There's the cost issue, and this cannot be dismissed. Proponents of Trident always erupt with howls of outrage at this idea that somehow they must justify the cost, that somehow they must justify the use of taxpayers' money for this system, as if this is the one area which is completely shut down for debate, as if taxpayers cannot ask what their money is being spent on. Well, public money, this is public money. There are choices which have to be made about how it's spent. It's not the plaything of politicians. It's not at all for ambitious MPs to climb up the ministerial pole. It is public money, and they have a duty to be accountable for how that is spent. And people can ask us, 1 minute, okay. So there are the huge costs of this. The Strategic Defence Review in 2004 estimated that Trident would be £12.5 billion. It's now gone up 15 to £25 billion. They're credible estimates which have put the cost as high as £76 billion. And you look at the records, you look at any government's records on big public projects, and it is not a good record. And there is one point I would like to finish on, actually. There was the argument about Trident at the moment comprising 3% of the budget, and the argument that that is insignificant. Well, let's leave it on this thought. I think that that troops returning from Iraq and Afghanistan to shoddy housing, or I think troops in Afghanistan and Iraq and elsewhere with shoddy equipment, I think to them 3% of the budget would make a big difference. And so there's a cost argument. I could go on further to setting out a positive vision, which I wanted to do. However, I'm not going to do that. But I will finish on this thought that Scotland, the Scottish Parliament, led the way by demonstrating cross-party opposition to this motion, to the idea of renewing Trident. On many issues, Scotland has led and England has followed. I hope that on this case, England will follow where Scotland has started, and I hope that we will move towards a much more sustainable and ethical and sensible foreign and defence policy. Thank you.
I would like to invite opposition speaker number 2.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be able to speak in this debate and on the opposition tonight. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with Mr. Rumbles and the members of the Politics Society. Okay, first, we don't want to get into debate on this side of the House into cost. We accept that 3% of the defence budget, we argue, is not that much, but we accept it's still quite a lot of money. But the point is, the arguments about utility and usefulness are the most important here. Why? Because if they're right, then how much we spend on Trident actually doesn't really matter, because it's worth it. Because protection of the country's national security and protection from nuclear threat is absolutely vital. And we think that in actual fact people in the population will be quite happy to pay for that. So we don't think the cost really comes into this, and we think that